Free speech, yes, according to the Prime Minister. Let's talk to Esther McVey, former Minister for Common Sense, of course. Esther, I mean, I don't know where to begin with this guy, really. The idea that he says he's not across the detail of the Lucy Connolly case, one of the highest profile cases of a woman going to jail in the history of this country. I mean, how can he even stand there and say that with a straight face? Morning.
Well, he did come across removed from reality, didn't he?
Yeah.
I think the fact that he said he didn't know about this or he wasn't across the facts of the case is something that all politicians say when they don't want to answer a question. The reality is this lady has been treated incredibly cruelly, and her sentence is absolutely disproportionate to what she did. We knew the tweet was vile and cruel, etc. She admitted it. She said it was wrong. She took it down. But how she's been treated is rather peculiar, because the courts always bend over backwards so as not to put a woman in prison, particularly a woman with a child, and with children they bend over backwards. This hasn't happened here. Worse still, she's been available, or she would have been allowed to have gone for something known as release on temporary license since last November, which meant she would at least be able to go home and see a child and a husband who's ill for maybe a weekend every fortnight. She hasn't been able to do this either. So the whole case stinks, quite frankly.
It does. And I mean, it reads very much like a stitch-up, doesn't it? That she was advised by her barrister to plead guilty to quite a serious charge on the grounds that she would be treated more leniently. And it seems to me, and it's only a supposition, it seems to me that most of the people who pleaded guilty were given pretty extensive sentences. You know, we know what Keir Starmer thought of them all. He accused them all of being part of some far-right thuggery, organised sort of criminal enterprise, which has now been completely and utterly disproven. They were just ordinary people who were criminal on that particular occasion because they were you know, worked up. They were driven to it for one reason or another. We don't excuse what they did, and you know, yes, some of them should have gone to prison, but you know, she's got more of a sentence than some of the men who were involved in actual violent rioting, which doesn't make any sense at all, does it?
And that is the point that the public are getting angry about. And that's why they're talking about two-tier policing. They're talking about two-tier sentencing. You could be a family talking about a teacher being recruited on WhatsApp and 6 police go round and knock at your door. Remember that case from a few weeks ago? No. Now, there is something, you know, if I'm being honest here, if there are riots, if there is civil disobedience, you will find that the courts will come down hard as if to make an example of those people. And that happened back, I don't know if you remember the riots 2011 when David Cameron came in. So people who could have been on the periphery of a riot was treated very harshly. We get that. This is to say, we do not expect her to do this. You should not do it. However, now, when we see this unfairness, this cruelty treated towards her, it does seem as if they are making an example of her, and it is, I'd say, like I said, it's cruel.
Yeah, and as you say, there's nothing in the world that would stop them from allowing her out, you know, every couple of weeks to see her daughter, who's 12 years of age, who's apparently really struggling with the fact that her mother's not around. And, you know, it's just incredible to me when you see the stories today about what the plan is to release several thousand prisoners on an electronic tag, some of whom are violent criminals, some of whom are sex offenders, some of whom would have been involved in domestic abuse cases, and yet she can't get one.
And she'd be top of your list, surely, to release out. And that's why I say this Labour government are looking so far removed from reality. Keir Starmer, that he didn't know what was going on. They don't know what people are talking about in the local pub. They don't know what people are saying in the community. They are not seeing the grievance that's going on here.
No, exactly right. You were up in Parliament yesterday asking a question of the Chancellor. Let's have a look at that and see what happened.
Mr. McVeigh.
I'm sure the Chancellor subscribes to the basic principle that if the cost of something is put up, then we'll see less of it. It's the reason that governments over many years have put taxes on things like smoking. Does she accept this principle also applies to employing people? And the more expensive this government makes employing people with its jobs tax, increasing nick for employers, the less we will see of it.
Well, I think a really good example of that is the Conservative Conservative Party. The cost of the Conservative Party went up and the number of MPs shrunk.
They really don't like being challenged, do they? They get very shirty. You know, Keir Starmer last week was really rude. He apologised, in fact, yesterday in a rare moment where he said to that Plaid Cymru MP that he had been unduly rude to her. He'd obviously been told that, you know, that wasn't a great look because we know he doesn't deal very well with women, and that really did make him look a bit of a misogynist last week. But poor old Rachel Reeves doesn't seem to get it, does she? I mean, today we've got inflation jumping to 3.5%. Jobs getting cut all over the place, and she'd rather try and sort of insult the Tory party than actually answer in a responsible position.
Well, I think it's showing now the inexperience of this government, and I would also say they all seem hugely out of their depth.
Yeah.
And this was a basic economic principle. If it costs more, you see less of it.
Yeah.
And we are seeing that now with employment. We are seeing all of these taxes, the rise in national insurance contribution, the increase in the minimum wage, the workers' rights bill, which will put another $5 billion on businesses, and we are seeing those businesses shrink. We are seeing them not employ people, have fewer people employed, or we are seeing them sort of close in its entirety or move abroad. And this is what they're doing. So every day now they seem to be surprised, or Rachel Reeves today was disappointed with the increase in the inflation figures, but they are dismantling the economy bit by bit. Prices are going up, inflation's going up, people can't afford, and so they won't spend the money, or they'll close the business. I mean, what governments usually do and use taxation for is sort of promote behaviour they want, i.e. saving, growing the country, increasing your business, and increase taxes for behaviour they don't want, which was why I gave the example of smoking. They singly failed to do this and understand this.
Absolutely right. And today I think Liz Kendall is going to make her little announcement about benefit cuts, which is going to cause a massive rebellion on the backbenches of the Labour Party, because there's two people back there. There's the ones who want him to go even further into the European Union, and there's the ones that want him to go nowhere near disability benefit and not cut anything at all. We got Angela Rayner this morning in the Telegraph talking about, you know, taxing more people who have actually bothered to save money over the course of the last few years. I mean, the whole thing is this sort of clattering train that seems to be heading into a siding somewhere.
So all those responsible people who worked hard, weren't state dependent, have made a few bob, put it aside and living off it, those are the people who are being absolutely squeezed and persecuted. And as you say, and those are the people who are paying for benefits. And the Labour Party, stuck in its own ways, squeeze, take the money off the people who've got it, couldn't grow the economy, couldn't grow it, you know, if their life depended on it, and then are worried now about benefit changes. That $5 billion benefit change is a drop in the ocean. Yeah. The paper is going to be going up by about $45 billion by the end of this Parliament, so that is nothing. So they're not actually cutting benefits, they are slightly cutting the increase with which it is growing. And you're right, there's huge turmoil within the Labour Party, various factions all pushing and pulling Starmer and Reeves in different directions.
Yeah. And finally, this Euro deal, which was done on amidst much fanfare on Monday, is already sort of unravelling. You know, we're told that, I mean, I was never a fan of this, the idea that e-gates and access to airports was suddenly going to be better and therefore everybody's going to vote Labour at the next election. You know, I mean, apparently it's not even going to happen until possibly next year. We've now got the roaming charges for people with phones when they go to Europe being blocked by the EU, so it's going to be more expensive to use your phone in Europe, despite this deal. We've got these young people coming over, we're now told probably with dependents as well, you know, people up to the age of 35. Nobody knows quite how long we're going to be stuck with them, or when they're going to go home, what they're going to do, where they're here, where, you know, where they're going to live, all of that stuff. It's all kind of smoke and mirrors, isn't it?
So Starmer's always wants to go back into the EU. He just couldn't say it. So we now have this, again, speaking with forked tongue, saying one thing, doing another. I call this as a salami way back into the EU, because we're going in slice by slice. And what you're saying now, we'll be taking rules from the EU, we'll be paying into the EU. Look at the aquaculture, look at the fisheries. But yesterday, because there was 2 hours in Parliament of the Prime Minister addressing the House about the sort of EU surrender deal that he's done. And I did ask the question as a former Secretary of State of the Department of Work and Pensions about the youth movement. About youth unemployment in this country is 14.2%, but if you look in Europe, youth unemployment is significantly higher. Spain, 26.4%, Sweden, 24.1%. So I can understand that the EU are wanting youth movement because they're pushing their youth unemployment into the UK. So I asked him, what impact assessment had he done on youth on his scheme on youth unemployment in the UK, particularly for white working class boys, and did he have a cap on the numbers of movement, none of which appear to have been done. Trust me, this will be a disaster for our young people. He is selling young Brits down the river.
He really is, and the rest of us are flowing straight behind them as well. You know, there's nobody saved by this. You know, there's no respite, it seems to me. Great to talk to you, Esther McVey. Thank you very much indeed. Former Minister for Common Sense, of course, still Tory MP.